Havlicek steals it. Havlicek stole the ball. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Amici powers in.
Won their 6th NBA championship.
Gibson, swing. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable. Don't believe what I just saw.
Pedro, to me, is not just one of the greatest pitchers of our era. He's one of the most magnetic figures of our era.
When you talk about Pedro, he is extremely talented. But I think what stands out is the chip on his shoulder, which is the size of the Citgo sign. It's just this massive chip on the shoulder, this attitude, this edge.
I don't believe in them curses. Wake up to Del Bambino and have me face him. Maybe I'll drill him in the eye.
He's not physically imposing, but he'll give you that death stare to match the stuff that he throws, and that almost inexplicably does give him this ability to put the fear of God into hitters.
There is a certain edge and fearlessness to him that the fans love. He was always going to pitch inside, because Pedro didn't get to the major leagues by being timid.
Pedro's a guy who pushed a lot of teams. He made no mistake about the fact he was going to pitch in. He was going to pitch in often.
He had a reputation of being a headhunter. Now, he's an intimidator, and the way I look at it is that's part of his game, and that makes him great.
That's part of the allure of Pedro, is that, you know, he had that reputation, and guys certainly didn't want to stand in the box and get comfortable against him.
You know that when he's out there, you better be leery about what's going on, you know, because he's old school.
He will demand that side of the plate when need be. He'll try and let it ride up there, up and in, to keep guys from diving all over the plate.
The 1-2 pillow, and he hits Gerald Williams.
I don't think there was any question in the minds of the hitters that when Pedro hit you, he knew why he was hitting you, and he knew what you were supposed to think when he hit you.
And he's not very happy, and there he goes. Pedro Martinez here after being hit by that pitch, and both benches will empty.
The reputation is always there. It's always behind me, and it's not a bad thing to have. I don't care what the reaction is going to be. I might look arrogant to a lot of people, but it's not my intention to hurt anybody. I've been hit plenty of times. I was a National Leaguer. I got hit. I even charged the mound one time.
And here they go. Pedro throws his helmet at Mike Williams, and a huge pile out in the middle of the field.
A fastball that left a vapor trail, a changeup that paralyzed hitters, and then eagerness to pitch inside, all combined to make Pedro Martinez one of the dominant hurlers of his era. In a 7-year stretch, he earned 3 Cy Young Awards, captured 5 ERA titles, and won 82 more games than he lost. But in Game 3 of the 2003 ALCS against the Yankees, he unraveled.
He was cranky. Something was bothering him, probably physically. He didn't have a feel on the ball at all.
Curveball, that one is hit high and deep to left field. That one is way back there, and it is over everything.
When we started getting some hits off Pedro, it just looked like he got just very upset and was looking to make a point.
Now Pedro throws, and he throws one right over the head of Karim Garcia.
You put on my career in danger right there by hitting me on my head, and I don't respect that whatsoever. You can hit me on my shoulder or below. I had no problems whatsoever. I will take my base. But when you throw on my head, that's a different situation.
I have no respect for that guy. I don't have anything to prove to that guy. Who are you, Karim Garcia, to try to test Pedro Martinez, a proven player for 10 years? That's what I don't understand. Why would I hit Karim Garcia?
You don't hit the corners all day long and then all of a sudden get whacked around a little bit and then just take it and throw it behind somebody's head.
Yeah, I mean, there was no doubt we felt like that it was intentional, so you're furious. Felt like that we had him on the ropes out there. Then to do that, you know, you hate to see it.
I've seen him take some real shots at people. And the one he threw at Garcia,
kind of just tipped off the situation for me.
Kareem Garcia wants to get into it with Todd Walker out there. Now Garcia, he wanted a pound of flesh from somebody.
And then I turn around and I start yelling at Pedro and you know, just calling him off for throwing behind my back, and you know, he's just saying all kinds of stuff too.
Martinez now pointing. That's the wrong thing to do.
To me, when you say something like this, it's gonna hit you in your head. And you know, that's what Posada said. I said, come on, throw at me and see if you want to do that.
A lot of people might think, well, he pointed at his head while talking to Posada. What I said was to Posada, I would remember that you cursed my mom.
Well, that's an unfortunate gesture at a time like that, if that's what he's in fact saying. It was really not a good thing to be doing at that moment, and I thought it was embarrassing to the Red Sox.
Fastball up and in, and Ramirez is going out toward Roger, and now the benches have cleared.
And I remember looking at the corner of my eye and seeing Zim, and I almost said, stay here. But I know he wouldn't have. I mean, Don Zimmer, he's not made that way.
It's this WWF moment dropped into an American League Championship Series game, and just when you think things can't get any weirder between these two teams, you see Don Zimmer bull rush Pedro Martinez from across the field.
And now Don Zimmer has been pushed down by Pedro Martinez.
I try to hold him. I try to protect him, because I understood. I was fully aware that it was Zimmer. I did not mean to hurt him. The man tried to punch me. So I stepped aside, did not throw a punch whatsoever. I let him go.
I got bad legs. I got a titanium knee. I thought I was going pretty fast, but I wasn't. And when I went after him, he just kind of sidestepped me and threw me down. And by that time, I was out of gas. I couldn't get up anyhow.
It was Zimmer who was pushed down face first by Pedro Martinez. And now he's being attended to by Steve Donahue. This has really gotten ugly.
By no meaning I want to hurt a guy that's my daddy's age. By no meaning I will raise my hand against a guy like that. I'm more of a man than that.
I'm embarrassed. What happened yesterday? I'm embarrassed for the Yankees, the Red Sox, the fans.
Zimmer was so contrite the next day and tearful, and Martinez could not bring himself to offer an apology.
I don't think he took the full responsibility for letting that game get out of control, but in his mind, that wasn't his fault.
The man owes me no apology. If he wants to apologize to anything, he should apologize to Garcia for throwing it at his head. Not me. He don't owe me nothing. I don't owe him nothing either.
A prisoner of his machismo, Martinez has always been goaded on by slurs about his size. Despite all his success, he still feels a constant need to prove himself.
He was a little guy who made it. He was a little guy who got picked on a little bit when he was very young. He was the guy that was always told, you're too small, you're too skinny to be a major league pitcher. And he fuels off of that.
I don't think I have the words to describe how important baseball is for the Dominican Republic.
Every kid in this country wants to be a baseball player. Now they know you can be rich overnight if you become a major league player.
Posición anterior.
Dominican country haven't seen a pitcher like Pedro Martinez.
When he's pitching, everybody's on the TV, on the radio, whatever, waiting for it.
Pedro calls it un toque de queda. Un toque de queda in English means a curfew. It's as if a curfew occurs in his hometown when he's pitching. Everybody is watching the game. The town stops in its activity.
Pedro Martinez was born on October 25, 1971, in Managuayabo, a small, impoverished suburb of Santo Domingo.
Managuayabo could be a poster for how poor Dominicans are
feral dogs run around the streets, kids run around in barely any clothes, freshly slaughtered chickens sitting in the sun waiting for someone to bring them home. It's a very poor, humbling experience to walk through there, and that's exactly the circumstances that Pedro grew up in.
No facilities whatsoever. Just actually surviving and making it through.
My mom and my dad, they didn't make a lot of money. They just make money enough to us to survive.
In those days, we didn't have anything. We were extremely poor. Our house was a little house of wood, a house of humble people.
We used to raise cow, you know, our grandmother and our grandfather, and that's what they had. It was like a little farm.
Our dad, he was a former player, amateur player. My two uncles, they play baseball, so it was kind of like I was following my dad and my uncle being a baseball player.
The game I learned was a tough game. The first thing they taught me when I was a little kid, do not fear the ball. Do not fear the ball.
They didn't have any baseballs. He would rip the heads off his sister's dolls, and they would use the plastic dolls' heads.
The doll was mine. Sometimes they took socks and pantyhose and they made a ball. They had to find something round to play with.
But even the delight Martinez found in baseball could not ease the ache he felt when his parents divorced.
Well, I think when you talk about Pedro being sensitive now, you can't help but go back to his father leaving when he was young. He would go up in a tree right next to his house, and that was kind of his corner of the world.
It was really hard for me to see them split apart. I couldn't take a no for an answer because I was only 8 years old. I was used to seeing them both together. It was really the most difficult part of my life.
I used to call him Angel. Pedro was little, but he was the smile of our home, and he was a very loving and caring little boy. When I separated, Pedro and Ramon supported my decision, and Pedro, who was number 5, told me, "Mom, we are going to keep moving forward, and when I become a ball player, I will give you a good life."
His older brother Ramon became Pedro's nurturer. At 16, Ramon pitched for the Dominican Olympic team in 1984, and later that summer signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Ramon has been Pedro's ballast his entire life. Ramon is very wise, very reasoned, totally unemotional, unlike Pedro, who's very emotional. And Ramon has always had a great sense of his responsibility as the older brother.
If I wanted to play baseball, which was like a big deal to me, I always wanted to be like my brother. He told me, well, you have to go to school. You have to learn.
We were like the hope of the family. And I was preparing Pedro. He became like my second plan in case that I fail.
Everything that he's achieved, he got to thank Ramon. Because pitcher, short, like Pedro, is not. Too small, too little. But because he was Ramon's brother, they gave him a chance.
We took into account that Pedro was Ramon's brother, still at the time of trying him out. If the boy didn't have any chance, it didn't matter if he was Ramon's brother.
In 1988, Pedro was 16 and at 5'9" weighed only 140 pounds. But he pitched far larger than his size, and the Dodgers signed him for $6,500. After pitching 2 seasons in the Dominican Summer League, he was assigned to a rookie league franchise in far-off Great Falls, Montana. There, he found a surrogate father in his pitching coach.
My wife put in a program where we were going to teach him a word a day. He'd get the word at 8 o'clock in the morning. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he knew how to spell it. He knew how to use it.
My white daddy, that's how I call him. I was very spoiled to have somebody that cared that much about me. And he actually was the one responsible to change the grip on my changeup.
In 1990, Ramon Martinez became a 20-game winner for the Dodgers. For Pedro, his brother's success was both a source of pride and envy.
Everybody's like, nepotism. He's only on the team because of his brother, you know. We'll get him.
I remember one night in Butte, Montana, when he gave up 12 runs in the first 2 innings, and he just broke down crying. He said, "I'll never be like Ramon. I want to be like Ramon. I wanted to get the big leagues."
Martinez was cocky, temperamental, and unapologetic, none of which endeared him to teammates, coaches, and opponents.
Pedro realized at a very young age that that plate belonged to him. Manager for the Brewers hollered at Pedro, "Martinez, you're going to have a brawl every time you pitch." And Pedro said, "That's okay." He said, "Your kid's throwing 85. I'm throwing 95.
Pedro threw his first bullpen with me catching him. And, you know, after 8 minutes, I'm getting ready to shift over to another side of the plate, and he looks at me and says he's done. And I'm thinking, we just got started. You can't learn yourself in 8-minute sessions.
Players were very envious of Pedro. He would get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, "Be in the lobby at 5:30. The van is picking you up. You're going to the airport. You've been called to the big leagues." He was down in that lobby because he thought he was really being called to the big leagues. It was just other players.
The actual call-up would come eventually. But even though Martinez, at 19, was named the Sporting News Minor League Player of the Year in 1991, he would have difficulty finding a home with the Dodgers.
Now you can test drive Snapshot before you switch. Visit Progressive.com today.
Despite showing great promise during spring training in 1993, Pedro Martinez was not on the Dodgers' opening day roster.
When you have the experienced pitching staff that we had, we just felt that he wasn't ready to be a starter, and it was better for him to go down and pitch in the minor leagues and get more experience.
The day before the Dodgers opened the season, Martinez received the news.
It was like 30 minutes before the boss left to go to Miami. And then I had my little headphones on, and I'm like, oh, I'm ready to go.
Manny Monta, he called me that, you know, they're going to send Pedro down. So I said, well, Manny, Pedro, I know that Pedro, he's going to be upset. Very, very upset.
Pedro, in fact, called me in a very professional manner, said, "I just want you to tell me that I'm not one of the 10 best pitchers." And I said, "No, Pedro, I won't tell you that. What I will tell you is that we need to send you down as we start the season."
I got off the bus. I said to Ramon, "I'm leaving. I'm actually leaving. These people don't want me here."
Then his older brother recounted how 4 years earlier, he had experienced that very same feeling of being discarded.
Ramon said to me, "Imagine that you're me when I pitched 9 shutout innings against Atlanta. I got sent down half an hour later to the minor leagues, and all I had to do was just swallow that. You guys were waiting for me to send some money to help with the school, to help with your clothing, with your food. If you were me, would you have left?" When he told me that, I had 2 big tears just dropped down, boom, boom.
I quickly went and found a brand new baseball and wrote on it a note to him and got it in the bottom of his bag so that when he opened it in Albuquerque, it was going to be at the bottom of his bag and he would find it there. I wrote on it to Pedro from one big leaguer to another, "You'll be here soon."
Martinez's stay in the minors lasted less than a week as an injury created an opening on the Dodgers. He responded with a 10-5 record in 65 games, almost all in middle relief. But once again, he heard the skeptics whispering, this time whether earlier surgery on his left shoulder by Dr. Frank Jobe would result in a lack of durability.
I know that Frank Jobe was very concerned when he went in to do the left shoulder simply about body structure, and is this something that could impact Pedro and his right shoulder?
There was a question of that by some people, whether his body would stand up to the stress and stamina of being a starter.
The power that he generated with that delivery and the velocity that he threw, it looked like it would be a breakdown.
Well, I think I probably made a big mistake with Pedro, and I was asked by the general manager, would you trade this player or this player that's just come off of surgery? And the obvious answer is I'd trade the one that just came off of surgery.
The Dodgers not only had their doubts about Martinez, they wanted to acquire second baseman Delino DeShields from Montreal. The one-for-one deal was another pride-piercer for Martinez, further fuel for his "I'll show them" attitude.
I can recall calling him in the Dominican Republic. He was clearly disappointed. His dream was to play for the Dodgers.
This is a guy who grew up really idolizing the Dodgers because of his big brother, Ramon. He was heartbroken when the Dodgers traded him, and I think he's carried that as a motivating factor. That's still a chip on his shoulder.
Anytime I think about Pedro Martinez, I think like if he was one of my own children.
It was Felipe Alou's belief that he could start, that the man inside was stronger than the body itself.
Pedro Martinez was 22 in 1994 and still trying to find himself, all the while scattering hitters like flushed quail. He led the National League and hit batters with 11.
He wanted to pitch in, he wanted to get command of the fastball in, and as a result of that, he hit a bunch of guys.
The great debate in Pedro's first year was he intentionally trying to hit guys?
You know, he threw the ball hard, and he was trying to establish inside, and we understood that as his teammates, but I don't think our opponents did.
I think he intimidated a lot of guys because he did pitch in. He was a guy that was throwing a 94-mile-an-hour fastball at a time where there wasn't that many guys throwing that hard.
In only his second Expos start, Martinez was perfect for 7+ innings. But earlier in the game, he had thrown a pitch with combustible consequences.
Whoa. He come in close to my head, the first pitch, and we exchanged words. And then the next at bat, you know, he ended up hitting me.
And now here we go. Reggie Sanders goes after Pedro Martinez.
So people was like, oh my God, how's he going to charge the mound? He's throwing a perfect game and, you know, what have you. And I was like, well, you know, people just didn't understand how everything transpired up until that point.
Martinez wasn't ejected, but lost his no-hitter in the 9th inning. 2.5 weeks later, he faced the Padres' Derek Bell with the same bench-emptying results.
Lui, il va y aller au monticule. Voilà, ça vient de partir. Oh! Les Bravos sont forcés sur Pedro.
Mark Davis started yelling at Pedro outside the first base line, and he was pointing a finger at Pedro and yelling at Pedro.
Knowing the ability and knowing how good he was, we thought if you throw in on guys, you know, come in there, but not at the head.
After each fight, it would make him tougher. It'd make his resolve stronger. At times, he probably felt like it was they're picking on me, and it's me against the world.
The Expos searched for ways to rein in Martinez's wildness, at least once with humorous results.
Well, I know one of the things that Joe Kerrigan did, he went out to a department store and he talked them into donating an old mannequin.
We put the plastic dummy right on top of the plate and get his eye trained to throwing inside.
And all of a sudden I heard this pow, and I looked down and the mannequin's head was gone, and there were pieces of plastic and debris all over the place. Pretty soon the mannequin had tape up here, duct tape down here. It was being held together by tape and baling wire.
We then decided that maybe he should use the four-seam grip inside to right-handers. If he missed wide, at least it wouldn't keep going in like a heat-seeking missile towards the batter. And I think that was a big part of his development.
In June of 1995 in San Diego, Martinez had everything harnessed.
A guy yelled at me and he goes, Pedro, you're not getting the perfect game. Oh, you're not going to get not even a no-hitter.
I looked back and I'm like, oh, it's actually perfect. Nobody has gotten on.
Struck him out. Pedro Martinez is perfect through 9 innings. And there's no score in the game.
Felipe sent him out there in the 10th, 0-0, and Bip Roberts ended up getting a first pitch, first batter double, and that was it. He was out of the game.
Kerrigan, after that start, walked down the right field line and put his arm around Pedro and said, I don't care where this goes in the record book. Don't you ever forget that you just faced 27 guys and retired 27 in a row.
All the knocks about Senor Plunk, about Pedro the headhunter, about being too small to ever be a starting pitcher, about not having the stamina, that was all washed aside.
2 seasons later, Martinez went 17-8 with a 1.90 ERA and won the 1997 National League Cy Young Award. But he was a jewel the financially strapped Expos could no longer afford. He was shipped to Boston for Carl Pavano and Tony Armas Jr. The Red Sox nation felt they had just won the lottery.
Pedro's start was like a concert because there was always this anticipation that he was going to do something. He was the star of the city from 98 to 2000. There's no doubt.
My house is 1.5 miles away from Fenway. And there are nights, if the wind is blowing from the east, when Pedro takes the mound, you can hear the Pedro, Pedro out on my back deck.
Spanish started to be a language which was spoken out in Fenway Park. After each strikeout, beyond the third, we count off his ponchados in Spanish.
History's not so great at Fenway regarding anyone who's not white Irish Catholic, so it was nice to see a little bit of a diversity brought into the ballpark and a different flavor.
Once arriving in Boston, Pedro Martinez signed a contract that would pay him $91 million for 7 years. He set about making an immediate return on the Red Sox investment by going 19-7 with 251 strikeouts. But his 1999 performance would be even more breathtaking.
Strike three! 17 strikeouts for Pedro Martinez. 22 Yankees in a row go down.
He has the best fastball, slider, changeup in the game. And slider's like a hard curveball. He can throw any pitch at any count, and he can throw it for a strike.
He's one of those guys that just has the natural ability to just throw the ball the same way every time. Ball comes out of his hand, and you never know what's coming.
He's got unbelievable torque on his breaking pitches, which, you know, most pitchers don't have.
Bugs Bunny, you know, it's cartoon character like. Well, this thing moves all over the place. If he throws a good one, you're not going to hit it, so don't try.
He doesn't have to throw the ball hard. He has such long fingers, and it means that that ball stays on your hand a long time and on your fingers, increasing the spin and giving you late movement.
I'll never forget him showing me the very tips of his fingers, where it's worn down, almost calloused. That's the last part of his body that touches the ball as it leaves his hand.
Well, sometimes when he's striking out people, and next thing you know, a guy will hit a ground ball, and you're like, oh, he didn't strike him out. And I'm like, oh, I better go get that ground ball.
There's no doubt in my mind, he is probably borderline genius at looking at a hitter during the course of a ball game. He just has an innate ability to pick hitters apart.
By midsummer, Martinez was 15-3 and was the American League starter in the All-Star game in Fenway.
Swung on and missed, strike three. So Pedro Martinez strikes out the side in the first half of the first inning of the 70th All-Star game.
He finished 23-4, became the first Red Sox pitcher since Cy Young in 1901 to lead the league in wins, ERA, and strikeouts. But before the fifth inning in Game 1 of the division series in Cleveland, the Boston ace was gone, complaining of shoulder and back tightness. The series went to a fifth and deciding game, and still no Martinez. With the slugfest tied at 8 through 3.5 innings, Boston's bullpen door opened and an epic effort followed.
Our team doctor said, listen, he could probably give you 1 inning. Probably 40 pitches, tops. Tops.
I remember the clock stopped when he came out of the bullpen. It's just one of those things. Time literally stood still at Jacobs Field.
Guys were walking to the bat rack. They stopped and looked up to see him walking in. It was like, what are they doing? Where's he coming from? He can't pitch.
Me bouncing balls in warm-ups, I was like, oh no, we're in trouble.
Before I knew I had a 97, 98 mile-an-hour fastball. This time I was like, well, he's probably expecting me to throw a fastball here because he knows me. Let me flip a changeup.
The pitch to Alomar. Swing and a miss. He struck him out on a breaking ball.
He just came in and he wasn't throwing as hard as he could, but he was throwing everything location.
The 0-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Strike three. The Red Sox have won it. They charge the mound and Pedro Martinez, the best pitcher in baseball, has pitched 6 no-hit innings in relief coming off an injury.
For him, with nothing more than 87-mile-an-hour fastballs and just pure will to no-hit the Indians over 6 innings is one of the most remarkable things I think any of us will ever see.
Martinez got Boston's only win against the Yankees in the ALCS, beating Roger Clemens. He then became one of 3 pitchers to earn a Cy Young Award in each league and tacked on another Cy Young season in 2000, going 18-6 with a 1.74 ERA.
In a historical context, you could take those 2 seasons and make a case at least for those being the best back-to-back seasons of any pitcher in the history of the game, mainly because we are in one of the great offensive eras in the history of baseball.
Pedro Martinez has been a consistent and generous benefactor for his hard-scrabble hometown of Managuayabo.
Pedro is a big idol here in this country because what he do off baseball, off the field. And he's neighborhood, people love him.
They ask him, you know, we don't have a church around here, and can you please help us with it? And he just did it when they signed him in '98.
I think it's amazing when asked, why would you build a school, would answer, as he did to me, well, I can afford it. Taxpayers can't afford it. They can't afford it here.
You see these kids playing baseball, and they have very nice turf shoes, they have very nice batting gloves, they have very nice fielding gloves, and those are from Pedro.
It's like my gift, to be able to give back and somehow make it easier for other people. It's my reward for everything I go through.
Making it easier for Martinez was being reunited with his brother in 1999 with the Red Sox. Although Ramon was plagued by injury, he more than earned his keep as Pedro's confidant.
The bond of affection between those two brothers was so palpable in that clubhouse. In those rare times when Pedro struggled, he oftentimes turned to Ramon for advice and counsel rather than, say, the pitching coach.
Ramon was out of baseball by 2001. His career ended by persistent shoulder problems. It was a condition that would haunt Pedro.
It's almost like God took the motor of a Lamborghini and put it in a Pinto because his body, his frame is so small. You always wonder, well, how long can this motor work?
I think every time that Pedro walks out to the mound, he's got a mental picture of his brother Ramon in his head. Ramon's career ended, Ramon disappeared, and I don't think Pedro wants to go out the way that Ramon went out.
Martinez was on the disabled list for 2 months in 2001. Even after returning, his shoulder still throbbed. Although the Red Sox were all but mathematically eliminated, they started him 3 more times, the last on September 7th at Yankee Stadium.
What Ramon did to hurt himself, I was about to do. Pitch through it. Pitch at 70%, like Joe Kerrigan suggested at one point.
We were going through the sale of the team. What we tried to do with that situation was not paint a bad picture, that the franchise player was hurt. The people in uniform were caught in the middle between doing what was right for the franchise and doing what was right for the kid.
We weren't going to put a pitcher at risk because the club was for sale. He's the one that knows himself better than anybody else. Okay, he's a professional pitcher. He knows his body. Well, that's not a decision that the club was going to make for him.
The love affair between the Red Sox and Pedro sort of ended there. I think Pedro looked at it as if, you know what, they'll march me out there hurt.
Even though the Pedro Martinez of 2002 was newly muscled, he learned to get by on guile and deception.
He's gotten smarter as he's gotten older. Now he mixes up, now he cuts his fastball, now he sinks, he takes a little off it. The older he gets, the better he gets.
He's still living through a generation of hitters that has faced a very healthy Pedro and a very dominant Pedro. And I think there are times that he gets people out on reputation.
Before it was just fearless competition. And go out there, leave it out there. Doesn't matter how sore I'm gonna be tomorrow, I'm gonna get you. Now is I'm gonna get you in a smart way, and I'm gonna be ready for the next one to get you again.
You know, right when you get to 100 pitches, you start to watch him. You don't want him to put undue stress on his shoulder, especially if it's not a very meaningful situation.
In the clubhouse, there were different opinions whether the preferential treatment accorded Martinez was divisive.
He's great, he's special, and he knows it. He's special, and at times he wants to be treated as such, and that can grate on people.
Pedro had this habit of showing up quite close to starting time, and after being warned by Jimmy Williams on a number of occasions, Pedro pushed it too far one Saturday afternoon and arrived to find out that Jimmy had taken the ball away from him and was going to have Bryce Flory start this game against the Seattle Mariners.
There wasn't one player in the clubhouse that day who said, boy, you know what, Jimmy really went out on a limb this time. Jimmy really overdid it. Boy, Pedro got screwed.
It embarrassed him, and he felt not respected. Big thing for Pedro, the big word is respect. That was the ultimate diss, in his view. Pedro really has the star complex. If I'm a teammate, I don't like some of the special treatment. Maybe they don't mind. I think some of them do. Some of them have told me they do.
Pedro's Pedro. He's a superstar. He deserves the respect of being a superstar, but he respects the rest of his teammates too. I don't think he gets special treatment. I think he has his program that he likes to follow, and it works for him, and you have to respect that.
Clearly, there were times when other pitchers on the staff went to management and said, hey, you know, shouldn't this guy be out running with the rest of us? Wouldn't it be nice if he showed up on time?
You just want Petey healthy and on the field every 5th day. As far as all this other stuff that people say, could be jealousy, come out of people's mouth, saying he gets this, he gets that. If he's on the field supporting his ball club and doing what he needs to do as a pitcher, that's all you can ask for.
I think he views himself as a guy who has expended every ounce of energy on behalf of this team and on behalf of this town and its fans, and he takes it very personally when he gets some slings and arrows in return.
Pedro sees boogeymen. I mean, he sees there are ghosts behind every corner that are out to get him. He does that to motivate himself, but the fact is that he has been beloved.
Martinez had always led a secretive life, but it was not until 2003 that people realized just how much they didn't know about him, including the revelation that he was engaged and also had a family.
He begins telling me about his children, and he specifically said he had 2 kids. He wants one to go to Boston College and one to go to Harvard. And I didn't even know he had 2 kids.
He shared the responsibility of the family to all of us. I have a son who is the first nephew of theirs, and they treat him as though he were their own. He is very affectionate with his children. He worries a lot about them, and he's a very good father.
He doesn't want people knowing where he lives. I think there's a little fear. He had an incident when a whole bunch of people jumped on his car, and he had a tremendous rush of claustrophobia.
He told me that when he leaves Fenway Park at night, he now makes it a point not to drive his own car because he's fearful that at the end of an autograph session, he'll pull forward and drive over somebody's foot and get sued for it.
He has a very close circle of friends, and it's really not friends, it's family members. It's his cousins, it's his sisters who come down during the season to cook and clean after him. Pedro shops and has gone to the Sierra Jamaica Plain of Boston, which is highly populated by Dominicans. He buys his music there, he gets his hair cut there, he sends his sisters to buy food there.
Someone saw him at Jamaica Plain, he gets back to the clubhouse the next day. Oh, you were in Jamaica Plain, you had this to eat? And he's thinking, well, how do you know that? He didn't enjoy this kind of intrusion into his personal life, and he felt like people should be able to turn it off at some point.
The only thing I hate about my career right now is the fame. I don't want my child to go through whatever I have to go through. I want to be private, and I hope I keep it that way.
Already having shouldered a heavy workload in the postseason, Pedro Martinez started Game 7 of the 2003 ALCS against the Yankees.
Grady Little never had the chance to give him that extra rest down the stretch, and I just think the tank went dry.
I was pushed to the limit, and all those pitches, all that traveling really affect me a lot.
Bottom of the 7th, Red Sox 4, Yankees 2, Game 7. Here comes the pitch from Pedro to Soriano. Swung on a miss, strike 3.
We had seen that so many times. He comes off the mound, he points to the sky, hugging guys in the dugout. I mean, it seemed pretty clear that he was coming out of that game.
I was actually told I wasn't going to go back out. Dave Wallace said, I think you're done. Grady came up and said, can you start the 8th? I said, okay, just have the guys ready in case I stumble a little bit.
Pedro Martinez has thrown 100 pitches. He's back out there for the 8th inning with a 5-2 lead.
When you look into his eyes and you see it, you want to give him that ball. And there's no question you wanted him out there in that inning.
Just 5 outs away from reaching the World Series, Martinez faced Derek Jeter.
Nobody was panicking on the bench, and we'd always talked about it, just wait for the ghost. Just wait for the ghost to come out. You know, things are going to turn around.
Winds, and here it is, swinging a fly ball, right field, deep, back goes Nixon, still going back, reaches up, it's over his head, it hops off the fence, Jeter to second base, hangs in there with a double.
We were up that whole time, but it was like, okay, we're going in here, okay, we're going in here. But I didn't question it because it was Pedro in the middle.
He fires, swinging a line drive center field, and Damon has to play it on a hop. Here comes Jeter to score. It's 5-3 Boston. Here comes Grady Little jogging out to the mound.
You see Grady go to the mound, and you think, you got to take him out. Take him out. Grady, take him out.
The bullpen has been so good lately. I bet some are surprised that Pedro's still in the game.
Bullpen in postseason has an ERA of 101.
I think the discussion was one thing and one thing only, to give Pedro a breather. Give him a little second, catch his breath, and to go on from there.
Grady Little comes out, says something to Pedro, pats him on the backside, and returns to the third base dugout.
When Grady came up, the simple question was whether I could pitch to Matsui or not. And I said clearly yes. That I was fatigued? Yes, they knew it. But Grady felt we had a better chance with me.
Line like a bullet. It's a base hit down the right field line. It's a ground rule double, and the Yankees are a single away from tying the game.
Next up was Jorge Posada, whose batting average against Martinez was a slim 189.
And because of the history that he's got against me, you know, getting me out, that left him in.
It'll be a 2-2. Swung on and looped to shallow center field. It is a base hit. One run scores Bernie. Here's Matsui. He scores. Posada goes to second with a double. And the Yankees have come all the way back to tie the game at 5 in one of the greatest comebacks you'll ever see.
I think Pedro was done in by pride in Game 7. I think that he knows his body and his arm better than anybody. It's a mature understanding of how much gas is left in the tank.
This is stunning. Pedro looks skyward and takes a deep breath as he departs. Embry coming on.
I got to tell you, I was surprised he came out for the 8th inning.
I felt like I could get everybody out still. But it didn't work. It just didn't work. But I'm proud of it. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm sorry because I lost the game or I lost the lead. I did whatever possible to win.
Here's Boone. He swings. A long high drive down the left field line. It's over.
There's no reason to blame Grady. Grady doesn't play the game. We did. I did. If anybody wants to look at somebody and point a finger, they can point it at me.
He defended Grady after Game 7, saying it's not the manager's fault. He didn't throw the pitch. I threw the pitch. And yet when we went down to the Dominican Republic over the winter, his tune changed a little bit, and he started saying, hey, I'm not the manager. I don't make that decision. I know that it turned off a lot of people.
I don't think that I can recall where a manager's decision to leave his star pitcher in a game reverberated so loud or so long. Terry Francona is sitting in that manager's office, and the reason he is because of that moment.
Grady was not fired because of one decision. Technically, his contract was not extended. Certainly, that was a factor that influenced the debate, to be sure.
During the 2004 season, Martinez again had mixed success against the Yankees. As the divisional race heated up in September, the hot-tempered Latino dropped his guard after blowing a lead in Boston.
I mean, what can I say? Just tip my hat and call the Yankees my daddies.
When Martinez continued to struggle against his nemesis in the ALCS, his teammates rallied from 3 games down to make history and win the series. Reverting to form, Martinez painted a masterpiece in Game 3 of Boston's sweep of the Cardinals. Although he had been a major factor in dispelling the curse of the Bambino, the 33-year-old free agent-to-be had pitched his last game for the Red Sox.
Shay, it ain't so. For Pete's sake at SportsCenter. John Butchergross with Steve Lee.
Well, late Monday night, Red Sox president Larry Lucchino said of Pedro Martinez, he will be missed, and we are disappointed to have lost him to the Mets and the National League.
Boston wouldn't pull the trigger. Do I have to sit and wait for anybody else to decide what my future is going to be? Would you? Oh my, show me, a lot of respect, a lot of commitment.
We needed a player that would give us a brand identification, not only throughout Major League Baseball, but also in areas like Latin America.
People are going to wonder whether he's transitioning now to the back half of his career. What is he at this point? How long can he continue to hold his stuff?
I know it's not going to be probably 40, Probably before then, I'll probably go. I don't know. I have to wait for my body to talk. I feel great, and I still feel like I have bullets left.
There's a certain poignancy to watching Pedro pitch because you never know which pitch is going to be the last one. Right now, that's the big question with Pedro. How many more pitches does he have left?